Some people even believe that there are no rules in the Octagon. Those people couldn't be more wrong, as MMA now has a numerous of rules governing what is and isn't allowed. In fact, we'll go over not only illegal moves, but also a few other notable fouls that could lead to a fighter's disqualification or at the very least a deduction of points on the judges' scorecards. So without further ado, let's take a look at the UFC's list of illegal moves. Number 1. Attacking a downed opponent with stomps, soccer kicks, and knees to the head is disallowed. In the UFC, stomping on a downed opponent is prohibited, as is hitting a downed opponent with soccer kicks. Surprisingly, as seen in the UFC bantamweight title fight between Petr Yan and Aljamain Sterling at UFC 259, landing a knee to the head of a downed opponent is also an illegal move that can result in a fighter being disqualified. The use of offensive language against one's opponent is arguably the most interesting illegal move on this list. Yes, this is against the unified rules of mixed martial arts and thus against the UFC's rules. Despite this, fighters rarely lose points or are disqualified for swearing or making obscene gestures to insult their opponents. Number 2. 12-6 elbows, small joint manipulation, rabbit punches, throat attacks, pulling the opponent's flesh, clawing, pinching, and outstretched fingers toward the opponent's face are banned in the UFC. The 12-6 elbow is one of the most well-known and debated illegal moves in MMA. With the analogy of a wall clock, the 12 occupies the topmost position and the 6 occupies the bottommost position. The 12-6 elbow can be better understood. A fighter throws a 12-6 elbow on a downed opponent at a perpendicular angle to the ground, but in a direction that goes from 12 to 6 on the wall clock. Small joint manipulation, such as pulling and/or twisting the opponent's fingers or toes, is also forbidden. Keep in mind that wrist and ankle locks are legal in MMA, but they're frequently incorrectly labeled as such. In the UFC, strikes to the back of the head, spine, and/or behind the ear are also prohibited. Even unintentional strikes to these areas can cause harm to the person who receives them. Throat strikes to an opponent are also prohibited in the UFC, including grabbing and attacking the opponent's trachea, twisting and/or pulling the opponent's flesh, clawing, pinching, and keeping one's fingers outstretched toward the opponent's eyes or face. Number 3. Groin strikes, hair pulling are illegal in the UFC. One of the most common illegal strikes seen inside the Octagon is groin strikes. If a fighter is hit by a shot and the referee notices it and stops the fight, the fighter has up to 5 minutes to recover. If the fighter is unable to recover within the time limit, the fight may be ruled a no contest or a DQ loss for the striker. Number 4. Fish hooking is not allowed in UFC. In the UFC, intentionally fish hooking an opponent is prohibited, which involves inserting one or more fingers into the mouth or any other orifice and attempting to pull the orifice apart. Fighters use the fish hooking technique by inserting their fingers into a cut or laceration on their opponent's face in an attempt to worsen it. This could leave the opponent permanently disfigured and/or cause serious injury. Number 5. Unsportsmanlike conduct and throwing an opponent outside the Octagon is not allowed in the UFC. Unsportsmanlike conduct that injures one's opponent is also forbidden. Attacking the opponent during the pause in the action, in between rounds, before or after the fight, and/or while the opponent is being tended to by the referee are all examples of this. Furthermore, a fighter's corner cannot engage in unsportsmanlike behavior. During a fight, a fighter's corner personnel are not permitted to intervene, whether to defend their fighter or to injure the opponent. While hostile behavior that qualifies as unsportsmanlike conduct is unquestionably prohibited, extreme docility is also prohibited in the UFC. It is illegal to throw an opponent out of an MMA ring or cage, or the Octagon in the case of the UFC. Although extremely popular in professional wrestling-based sports entertainment promotions, this move is prohibited in mixed martial arts. Number 6. Act of timidity is not allowed in UFC. Acts of timidity in the UFC include constantly disengaging from striking or grappling exchanges, running away from one's opponent, dropping the mouthpiece on purpose to cause the referee to pause the action, feigning an injury, and so on. For displaying excessive timidity, a fighter in the UFC could lose points from the judges' scorecards or be disqualified. Number 7. Grabbing the fence, the opponent's gloves or shorts, and headbutts are banned in the UFC. The UFC forbids fighters from grabbing the fence. Fighters typically use this move to either hold their opponent against the octagon fence or to grab the fence while on the mat in order to help themselves stand up. In MMA, it is prohibited to hold the opponent's shorts and/or gloves in order to gain unfair leverage and catch one's opponent. Furthermore, headbutts are prohibited in the UFC. Headbutts are notorious for severing opponents and severely injuring not only the opponent but also the fighter who delivers them. Number 8. Shots after the bell, disrespecting the referee, are not allowed in the UFC. One of the fundamental tenets of the UFC is that the two fighters in an MMA match are not allowed to hit each other after the bell or buzzer signals the end of a round or the end of the fight. After the bell, fighters are not permitted to strike or grapple with one another. When the bell or buzzer signals the end of a round or fight, the referee separates the fighters. If a fighter flagrantly disregards the referee's instructions, the referee has the authority to disqualify the fighter. For example, if the referee tells both fighters to stop fighting, they must do so whether they are striking or grappling. Number 9. Pile driving. Pile driving is the act of spiking an opponent on the head or neck to the canvas. It is common in WWE, but it is illegal in MMA if the intention is to injure the opponent. It has the potential to cause serious spinal damage. It happens all the time in MMA. Take a look at the video below to see a close example, albeit somewhat controversial, this one was legal, of Rose Namajunas losing her UFC strawweight belt. Number 10. Eye gouging is also not allowed in the UFC. It doesn't take a genius to figure out that eye pokes are extremely dangerous. Despite this, they occur frequently. Fighters are frequently seen fighting with their fingers open. Poking an opponent, whether accidentally or on purpose, can cause severe damage and potentially change the outcome of the fight. Eye pokes are sometimes penalized with a point deduction or even disqualification, but in most cases, they go unpunished. Because eye poking should be punished more severely, fighters are forced to close their fingers when reaching out. The illegal moves mentioned above are the most common. They are, however, not the only ones. According to the Nevada State Athletic Commission, the following are the remaining illegal moves that occur on a less frequent basis. Any type of throat strike, clinging to, pinching, or twisting the flesh, snatching the clavicle, kicking with the heel to the kidney, ejecting an opponent from the ring or fenced area, spitting at a competitor or the referee, using abusive language, attacking an opponent during the break, attacking an opponent who is under the care of the referee, attacking an opponent after the bell, and many others. If an opponent is injured by an illegal move in the UFC and is unable to continue, but they are ahead on the scorecards, the fight ends in a technical decision win for the opponent. On the other hand, if a fighter injures an opponent and the opponent is losing on the scorecards, the UFC fight is declared a technical draw. Although a UFC fight may appear brutal and violent at times due to punches, kicks, elbows, knees, throwdowns, submissions, takedowns, wrestling, and so on, it is still a sport. As a sport, the safety of the fighters is always prioritized. As a result, not everything is permitted inside the cage. There are still some restrictions on what is considered illegal. These should be followed by all fighters in order to play a fair game, correct? What are your thoughts? Please let us know in the comment section. See you again. Bye.